We've all been guilty of this at some stage. Sometimes we think the only way we can get a sale across the line is if we go down the path of discounting our product or service. Now, as we both know, this is not a very smart business move. First of all, it completely devalues your product, meaning that, for why would people pay full price for your product when obviously you've been selling it for a different product at a different time. Secondly, they're going to be far less likely to purchase that product at full price because they know that at some point you're probably just going to do another discount. In today's podcast, we are going to go through how you can resist the pressure of discounting your products or services. It's an extremely valuable lesson, guys. I cannot stress enough how important it is for you guys to nail this. I know sometimes it's easy to fall into that trap, but I stress to you guys, please make sure you go and implement what you learned in this episode. This is actually the third and final podcast of the Ethical Sales Delivering Healthy Margins series that I've conducted with Mr. John Dowell from Small Fish Coaching. Guys, please make sure you go and implement this. Go and listen to the other two episodes as well if you haven't already. They're both super relevant to you guys. They're both super relevant to the trades. And I know you're going to get a lot of value out of it, especially if you take the final step in implementing. Anyway, guys, please jump in and into the community and let us know some of your thoughts on this product, on this podcast and on this series. It's been a blast. I've learned a lot myself. I know you guys would have, and I'd love for you to be part of the conversation in there. That's all from me. Enjoy the podcast, enjoy the final episode of this series, and I'll see you in the community. Today's podcast has been proudly brought to you by Tradie Web Guys. Tradie Web Guys work with tradespeople only on their websites and marketing solutions to help them stand out from their competition. Everything from web design through to SEO, search engine marketing, content creation, you name it, guys. It is a customized solution for trade-based organizations, and it's fantastic. Head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/apply, fill in the form, and let's have a conversation.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Hello there, listeners. Welcome back to Toolbox Talks on the Site Shed podcast. My name is Matt Jones, and you are joining with myself and Mr. John Dowell from Small Fish Coaching for part 3 of the Ethical Sales Delivering Healthy Margins series we are conducting. John, welcome back.
Thank you, Matt. It's good to be here again.
So it's been awesome so far. We've spoken about where your power is. We've spoken about power and process. Do you want to give us a bit of a recap on those episodes, John?
Yeah, I do. So it started with my insistence, if you like, that sales is an important professional responsibility of you as the business owner, and that maintaining decent margins are your responsibility as well. You need to make enough margins to cover all your costs, your overheads, and your labour and your materials, and some risk and some profit for you. And that that sales is an important part of that. That by doing sales properly, professionally, and with discipline, you can maintain those margins and win more business. Right. Talked about preparation, understanding where you sit, doing enough marketing, understanding the value you bring, and actually being prepared in the first episode. And I talked about the power of process and diligence and qualifying, and not just focusing on putting a price together and handing it over, but explaining the context for that price and understanding what it is they want and explaining how you're going to give them what they want, which is rarely just a fence or a house or a pool or a fit out.
You also ran through a very useful framework for that entire process. So as always, guys, make sure you go back and listen to those episodes. We designed them in a way so that each episode ties into the previous if it's part of a series. So it will probably make more sense to you if you take the time to go back and check them out if you have not already. So, John, in this episode, we're talking about resisting the pressure.
Yeah.
What's that about?
Well, you always get it, don't you? You always get the pressure, just like how I said in the last episode, that most of your customers, what they really know to ask of you is, can you give me a quote? Even when what they really mean is perhaps something else, like, help me understand about building an extension. The same is true that, when it comes to near the end of a deal, they're going to ask you, they're going to try and pressure you on price. Almost everybody believes that that's what they have to do with tradespeople. The TV's out there, get 3 quotes, make sure you're not getting ripped off, always pressure them. There's this whole kind of story around it in our culture that you need to negotiate with tradespeople. We don't do it in restaurants, we don't do it in shops. Some of them you do. But we wouldn't go into a restaurant and have a nice meal and get a bill for $300 and go, I'll give you $250. But almost everyone tries it with a trade. You've got to resist that shit.
I found, what's your experience with the flat rate model selling in relation to discounting? I know I've got a lot of clients that use the flat rate model for more of your residential emergencies, cash on delivery sort of services, and they believe, or they confirm that that upfront pricing model kind of eliminates
it does
95% of those conversations, because people effectively go through and choose what they want and then sign off on it.
Yeah, look, it does a few things. It's a bit like a price ticket on an item in a shop compared to when you go to Bali and you say, how much is this? And they look at you and make something up, right?
Right.
You feel a lot more confident that if there's a price written down on a list somewhere, that's really the price. There's a bit of mental stuff going on there and cultural stuff, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Also, when you've prepared a flat rate price list, you've put some effort into knowing that that's real and true and fair. And, and you've done that job many times before, and you know that that's kind of the right price. So you're more confident. So when they say, oh, that seems expensive, you're already in better shape to say, no, it's not. It's fine.
So it's really imperative that, before we even talk about, this conversation, I suppose, around understanding discounts and whatnot, that we've got complete clarity over what we discussed in episode 1 when we're talking about understanding your numbers, understanding your true costs and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, right. You've got to be prepared. If you're not confident in your price and someone tries to ask you to discount, you're probably going to do it. If you think your price is fair and not greedy, it's much easier for you to say, no, my price is fair and not greedy. So your preparation, like I said before, is key. And the other thing is you can have 2 strategies with discounting, right? Expect, particularly if you're doing projects, but almost all trades, expect you're going to get this pressure, you're going to get this discount request. Now, my girlfriend, my partner's a psychologist, and she's quite well informed with all this, and she tells me that in the world, in terms of buying stuff, there are some people who are askers, and there are some who aren't. I'm not an asker. I pay the asking price every time. I'm rubbish. Right? I like being sold to. I like to make friends and buy off people I like and have good margins and all that. So I'm useless, right? Don't discount, don't negotiate at all. But other people feel like they need to ask. But quite often, having asked, if you say no, they're happy. They asked, they did their job. They weren't rubbish and a pushover. You said no, they found the boundary, everyone's happy and we move on. So just because they've asked, you need to understand that you don't need to give.
I think what interestingly as well, my experience has been with that is like when people do ask for things like that, if you can explain to them, well, sure, we can reduce the price, but in doing so, we need to remove something out of the proposal in order to lower that price.
Yeah.
Look, that's a bit of a paradigm, I think, that, that people that you can use in your tool, because we do it all the time. Because what you can do. That's not when the budget is this. And I say, okay, cool. What would you like to remove from it? Do you want to remove the email automation so you're not capturing any data from your website? Do you want to remove the templates, your marketing templates, or your project gallery templates, or that kind of stuff? People are like, oh, shit.
You could say, I won't discount. My pricing structure's fair, but if that's too much money for you, we can do less stuff. We can take things out, right? But don't just ask me to take my profit out. That's not fair.
So, and I think even in the resource section of my website, there is a discounting dangers document, which talks about, and you'll probably know better than me because I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but I'm pretty sure it's if you apply a 10% discount to a product or service, you need to sell 30% more,
shitloads more,
of that specific product or service in order to break even.
Yep.
Is that accurate, or am I bullshitting that?
Well, it depends what your margins are, but yeah, broadly speaking, yeah, very much so. If you're a trade business and you make a 30% margin, which would be generous for most tradies, right? Then you give a 10% discount, 10% of the whole thing, that's a third of your profit.
Yeah.
That's a big chunk of your profit to give away for nothing.
Right.
So yeah, totally what you say. I hate discounting. I'm not a fan, right? Never discount. I don't like it. I've written here, your strategy for when it comes to a discount could be either have room to discount, so charge more and then take some off when they ask you, or explain your pricing structure early and that you don't discount, and tell them that early in the piece. And then when they ask you, say, no, I've already told you.
The problem is as well, I find with discounting, and I mean, not that I've ever done it, but I know, with certain products and solutions that I've bought in the past that have had discounts applied to it, it sort of devalues, I won't say devalues the product, but it can devalue the product, but it also
does, yeah.
It also puts an expectation on the repeat business. That whole, well, I'll just wait for it to go on sale again before I buy again.
Yeah, totally. And also, it damages your trust. Because what you're saying to them is, the first price was a lie. I'm happy with the discounted price. So they've already sown a little strange little seed of, one, I don't quite trust what he says when it comes to money, and two, I can push him around when it comes to money. So you've made yourself, one, a bit of a liar, and two, a bit weak.
Mm.
You don't want that. You don't want to be a liar, because you've talked about how what you're bringing here is trust, and then you go ahead and damage it with a crap pricing structure. And two, you've come in as an expert, and you need to have some power in this relationship if you're to do your job properly, and you're damaging that by reasonably quickly saying, this is my price. Oh, okay, I'll be cheaper if you want, sir.
Yeah.
You're back to being Oliver Twist, like I said in the first episode. You've lost your power. So my preference is to explain your pricing structure and how that applies to a solution, a project, and explain that it's fair, get agreement that that's fair. And then when the discount request comes, just say no.
And I think as well, if you execute what you've, spoken about in the first two episodes, like first understanding where your power is and then understanding the power in the process, that conversation is probably less likely to happen.
That's right. Again, it's a lot of it is in the preparation. If you did your preparation work first and your price is fair, when they say you need to discount, you could say no. If you did your sales process properly, then you put the right context around your price and you explain that you don't like to discount and your price is fair, then when they ask you, you can do what you said. You can say, what do I need to take away to reduce the price?
Yeah.
It's often about understanding where this question's coming from, right? If they're just asking, just saying no is usually enough.
Mm-hmm.
If they're really comparing you to somebody else who's providing exactly the same thing at a bit cheaper rate, but they'd rather give it to you, are they lying? People do.
Mm.
Are they just trying it, but they'd really rather have you? How much extra will they pay over that guy for you? Because they obviously want you, or they wouldn't be asking you to match that guy's price.
Mm-hmm.
And is he really giving them the same stuff? You've got to understand that.
Apples for apples.
Apples for apples, If it's not really an apples for apples comparison, you shouldn't be discounting, And you're silly too. Because like you just said, discounting is a very expensive thing to do.
Yeah.
I had a delightful experience once with a car mechanic that I used to coach about 10 years ago. And I sat there, right, and we'd been having this discussion about not discounting, and he was a criminal at it, right? Gave everybody a discount. And this old chap walks in, and he goes, oh, sorry, John, excuse me a second. This is when I used to go and sit in people's offices, This old chap comes in to pick up his car, and he goes, hello, Jeffrey. Yeah, $450. He goes, $400 to you. And this guy reaches into his shirt pocket, pulls out a wad of 50s, peels one off, puts it back in his pocket, and hands over the $400. And I swore at him. I went, Mark, fuck's sake. And he went, sorry, John. He cost himself $50 unnecessarily, right? It was, it's a funny illustration, and he still remembers it to this day. Actually, we speak sometimes when he comes to Byron.
I mean, this ties so heavily into the first episode when you're talking about understanding your numbers, and I mean, part of understanding your numbers definitely. I mean, once you've got clarity, in my experience anyway, and I'm sure you'll probably agree, but once you've got clarity over what your costs are, what your prices are, you can't afford to give somebody a discount like that based off. I mean, you just can't afford to do it. I mean, if you actually understand what that's going to cost you ongoing, you'll never do it again.
No, and that's the big numbers tracker that we're going to give people to download.
Right.
A lot of that is about actually understanding what your costs are. If you do a proposal, say you do a proposal for a $10,000 job, and your labour's 4, and your materials are 4, and your profits 2. That would be a reasonably common breakdown, right, for a trade job. If a customer says, "Can I have a 10% discount?" you're giving away $1,000 of your 2.
Exactly.
Right, and then all it takes is one mistake, and you've made nothing.
Yeah.
And that 1,000 or that 2,000 has to cover your overheads, right?
Mm-hmm.
Business coaches aren't cheap. Marketing people aren't cheap, are they? You've got to pay for us.
Mm-hmm.
So, you need to cover those overheads with that margin. Don't be giving it away unnecessarily.
Yeah.
That would be my preference. Set a fair structure, defend it to the death, right? If somebody is pushing you hard for a discount, if they're not just an asker, remind them of the value, refuse to be compared to cheaper people, or make them acknowledge the difference between what you're proposing and what these cheaper guys are proposing, because it will usually be something less good. If you're a trade business and someone's significantly cheaper than you, we're not, not a few dollars here and there, but a noticeable difference, something different is happening, right? They're either hiring English backpackers and paying them cash,
or they've missed something,
or they're cutting corners. Look, if they've missed something, that opens up a whole other world of pain, doesn't it?
I remember when I had my plumbing business, I was quoting on projects, and I remember we got bumped out of a job once by like $80,000 on a job, and it was only a $270,000 quote or something and we were bumped out by $80,000. And I said to the builder, I go, "They've missed something." And he's like, he goes, "Sadly, it doesn't matter. They'll get the job and they'll just have to cop it,
Yeah. But actually the customer will probably miss out there.
Right. But I mean, coming back to what you're saying about, being in power, like the ability to say, like clearly communicate and just say to the builder, "Look, listen, I'm willing to walk away from this." And I was more than willing to walk away from it. At that point, actually, I was thrilled to be walking away from it. But,
yeah.
You're in a good position of leverage when you can sort of say, "No, I'm ready to."
Yeah. Look, and if we're going to go back to the process here, right? If you've done a good job of building that relationship and that trust, when they come and say you're $80,000 too much, you can say somebody else has made a mistake here and you're going to be in danger and expect to be heard and listened to like you were. And if you haven't, you just left unsure what to do, right? Maybe I fucked up and charged too much,
Yeah.
So back to the process. Do your investing in the process, because you'll be in better shape when you get confronted by these comments, these challenges. A lot of people will quote low, right? It's the building game, isn't it? Quote low, claw it back in variations.
So, I mean, the topic of this podcast is resist the pressure. Now, is it just pressure from discounting that we're going to be talking about, or is there other things?
Well, there's pressure from yourself as well, right? There's the negative self-talk pressure. And I kind of tried to cover it in the first episode. So You're resisting the pressure to be too cheap in the first one by doing your homework and understanding where you sit and trying to be honest with yourself about how good your business is and try and, relate that to where you should be on price. So I often say to people, if you compare yourself to, your kind of immediate competitors, the ones you're going to come up against, where do you sit? Are you the best one? And they often say, "I think we are. We're the best or as good as the best." But then you should be the most expensive.
Yeah.
You should, And if you're not, I'm going to make you put your price up if I'm your coach.
Yeah.
I might take a bit of time to get you to do it, but that's where we're going to be heading. People will pay extra for something better. Look at cars, If it was true that we all bought the cheapest one, we'd all be driving Kias, wouldn't we?
Actually, I do own a Kia.
Yeah, well, there's nothing wrong with them, but you made a choice. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, and I think that whole it's a thought process, isn't it? At the end of the day, like it's just it's
Yeah,
understanding, it's confidence, it's understanding where you stand in the process, and it's being willing to back yourself.
yeah, it is. Confidence is a massive word, Matt.
Mm.
And it's kind of unrelated to trades, but my brother-in-law in the UK is a vet, and I went on holiday and did some work with him there, like you do, and I walked around with him, and he wasn't making any money, and I was at him to put his prices up, and he was too scared, he was terrified to, and I stood with one of his customers once, and he went off to do something. I said, he needs to put his price up, I was all right, no shit. He needs to put his price up, He said, oh no, we can't handle that. He can't put his price up. And if he doesn't put his price up, his wife's going to make him go and get a job, and you're going to lose him altogether. And she went, we can't lose him, we need him. And I went, well, price is going up then. And she went, yeah, okay. And that's really, he was at that point where if he didn't change something in his business, she was going to say, you need to get a job.
It's
So,
funny.
Confidence.
It's funny, as well. I think as the business owner, sometimes we convince ourselves and fabricate fallacies in relation to increasing our prices. And I know we've been through the exercise with a number of our clients, and they were just absolutely adamant that their clients would refuse, hands down, just refuse outright the price increase. And so we did.
It's fairly true, isn't it?
Well, so my argument was, I guarantee you that if we do this for a week, 90% of them won't even notice.
Yeah.
Sure enough. And I mean, you have no obligation to tell your clients that you've increased prices by 10%. I mean, it's not like you go up there and clear a block drain, and 3 years later, your prices have gone up 10%. You don't have to be emailing and getting people to sign off and read your terms.
You don't have to do shit.
You do whatever you bloody well want.
Anyway, yeah.
Exactly. And sure enough, within a week, they didn't get not one single complaint, query on the bill, nothing in relation to the price. And all they did was increase their prices by 10%. And that makes a huge difference to their bottom line. That takes a lot of pressure off. And they were under pressure. And that's not even my role to be really teaching them that sort of stuff. But I just said, listen, guys, you're always crying poor. What's going on? And it took about a 5-minute conversation to figure it out. And sure enough.
Yeah. Absolutely, mate. Look, as a business coach, when somebody says to me, I'm not making enough money, John, there are 3 or 4 places I go and look. And that's one of them. Are you charging enough? Are you making enough margins? One of them is marketing. Are you doing enough marketing? Have you got enough opportunity in pipeline? And the other is, what's your margin like? Are you charging enough?
Yeah.
And if I can get you to put your price up and you don't lose everything, you're going to be in better shape.
Yeah.
So we'll go and look. I won't say I'll force everyone to do it straight away, but we'll go and look there and see if it's an option for us. And just like you said, I worked with an accountant once, 300 customers he had. He wrote them all a letter saying he was putting his price up. 40% he put it up.
Right.
300 letters. Guess how many phone calls he got?
Zip.
No, we got one.
You-
He got one from a guy who said, that's outrageous, I'm disgusted. And he said, well, take your business elsewhere then. And the guy said, no, I won't do that.
Yeah.
I'm just outraged.
Yeah. I know. It's pretty funny. So I think that's
resist it, right? Resist the pressure. It comes. Yeah. It's kind of cultural for us, but best to be resist, right? This is if you're building your business on trust and reliability and straightforwardness and clear communication and all that kind of stuff, then have a clearly communicated pricing strategy and then stick to it. Back up by reminding people that you agreed this and you said this. Back up by reminding them of the value that you bring, and then leave them to choose. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, that's their choice, right? Whether to choose you and what you provide and the beautifulness that you provide at this price, or the other guy or the other company and whatever it is that they provide at their price. Mm-hmm. That's all you can do.
Yeah.
And my last comment says, you can't win them all. Back to the marketing advice, which is do enough marketing and do it properly so that if you don't win it, it's not the end of the world. You can just go and do the next one.
And yeah, which ties into the power and process, or the
power and process. Yeah.
Power is, like if you've got, you should be able to be in a position where you can walk away from projects that don't suit you or just aren't going to.
Yeah. It's just a horrible place to be if you really need this job.
Right.
You will discount, right? If you really need this job and someone says, I'll give it to you if you drop 20K, You probably will.
Yeah.
You'll probably find that you're doing the job, it's low margin, and you can find yourself, on a bloody treadmill like a hamster. Everybody's working hard, but doesn't seem to be any money ever. Cash is always tight, all that stuff. You don't want that. You need to break through that, and enough margin consistently is the right answer.
So I think that pretty much sums it up. Are you happy with that?
Yes, I am.
So for listeners out there, that was part 3 of the Ethical Sales Delivering Healthy Margins podcast series that I've conducted with John Dale from Small Fish Coaching. That was Resist the Pressure. If you missed the previous episodes, episode 2 was Power and Process, and episode 1 was Where is Your Power? Go back and check those out if you missed them. If you have any questions, follow-up questions, queries, experiences, stories about ethical selling that you'd like to share with us, by all means, leave some comments whether you see this come across Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, or if you want to reply to the newsletter or whatever. We always enjoy having these conversations. Of course, if you're not in the Facebook community, that is where most of these conversations come from. So make sure you head across there. It is free at the moment, and it is actually an amazing community, 4,500 global tradies having very, very high level conversations about these sort of things. So by all means,
it's very active too, isn't it?
It's very active, 80% engagement, which I'm proud to boast. John, people can reach you at smallfish.com.au or at smallfish_coach on social media. If you want to email John, guys, info@smallfish.com.au. And John has generously left behind his big numbers tracker, which is a dashboard reporting spreadsheet that will be going in the resource section of the website, as well as a link to it in the show notes. So you can head across there and you can grab that for the grand total of 0. Apart from that, John, thank you very much for your time. It's been educational.
It's been fun, actually, Matt. Thank you.
It's been good. I look forward to involving you more in future podcasts and
me too.
Things that we've got coming up. Thank you for your time. And I think that's pretty much a wrap.
I think so too.
Rock and roll. Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to the siteshed.com where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from this show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.